This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jill Newbronner. Here are tonight's top stories. Malaysia looking to boost ties with its largest trading partner, China, with the two nations holding a bilateral summit, which also marks 50 years of diplomatic relations. China reaffirms U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's optimism of friendly relations between the superpowers. Foreign Minister Wang Yi says great things can be achieved as long as there's cooperation. A confidence among the heads of foreign firms in China turns pessimistic for the first time since the pandemic. A survey places the country's economic slowdown as the top risk to business. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's legal team denies insurrection charges against the impeached leader, but agrees to comply with investigations. Ukraine is said to be behind the assassination of a top Russian general killed by a bomb blast in Moscow. He was accused by Kyiv of being responsible for the use of chemical weapons against Ukrainian troops. Also on East Asia Tonight, Japan's cosmetic industry produces billions of dollars worth of goods every year, but a portion always ends up being discarded. Find out what's being done to give these unwanted products a new lease of life. The Malaysia-China Summit 2024 is taking place over 2 days in Kuala Lumpur. It brings together industry leaders to foster connections and engage in talks on trade, innovation and cultural exchange. Now, key discussions are underway about the expanding partnership between the two nations, with China maintaining its position as Malaysia's largest trading partner for the 15th consecutive year. In 2023, their bilateral trade approached $100 billion, and this summit highlights how investments in mega projects, innovation and technological advancements are deepening this collaboration. Well, joining us live from the summit with the very latest are our Malaysia correspondents, Afifa Arifin and Melissa Goh. Mel, let's start with you first. Now, in today's agenda on the summit, there were talks on mega projects that involve both Malaysia and China. Can you walk us through some of these projects and the impact they've had on both countries?
Well, as you know, Malaysia is among the earliest and largest proponent of China's Belt Road initiatives. And back in 2013, starting with the Malaysia-China Guangdong Industrial Park under the two countries twin park concept. Now, it's been 10 years, and its further expansion is expected to attract another $11 billion of investment in high-growth area. Now, while the 665 kilometers East Coast rail link connecting the east and west coast of Peninsular Malaysia is now 76% ready, and when its operation end of 2026 is expected to bridge the economic gaps, generating growth in the less developed East Coast by creating jobs and boosting economic activities and so on. Now, I spoke with the SOE, the state-owned enterprises behind these mega projects, and they are upbeat about the prospects. Despite the rising geopolitical risk, despite the possible tariff threats from the U.S., they are upbeat, they are unfazed. Let's take a listen.
我们中国人有句话叫做兵来将挡啊，水来土屯，大家有各自的选择。我们还是看好中国和东盟市场之间的贸易合作和经贸往来，所以我们也会长期的持续的在马来西亚的进行经营和发展。
近几年，由于中国跟美国之间的这样一些贸易摩擦呢，只能说在客观上加速推动了这样一个过程。所以我想呢，从这个角度来讲，应该是说，为我们这个马中关丹产业的发展呢，应该说创造了一个外部的一个推手，一个条件。
Now, beyond the mega projects, the summit has also focused on the role of AI to drive growth further. Now, Afifa, you attended some of the sessions. What are some of the opportunities that these collaborations can unlock for future growth?
That's right. Well, Mel, we've seen how AI has taken the world by storm, and every country is racing to build its own thriving AI ecosystem. And of course, Malaysia is no different. You know, we have seen how they have ambitious plans to become this regional hub for technology and innovation over the last year. We have seen billions of dollars of investments coming in from global tech giants to build R&D facilities, data centers, and other infrastructure. Malaysia already has an AI roadmap, and very recently it has launched its own national AI office, really signaling its commitment towards AI advancements. And earlier today, the Malaysia Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation, Chang Likang, was speaking at the Malaysia-China Summit, and he talked about how AI has the potential to catalyze economic growth and competitiveness between Malaysia and China. And he also spoke about how there should be more formal bilateral agreements, a joint task force, and other public-private partnerships. Let's listen into what he said earlier.
The transformative power of digital technologies is immense, and AI lies at its heart. Malaysia and China share a unique opportunity to lead in this space, driving economic growth, fostering innovation, and enhancing the well-being of our people. To sustain this momentum, we must formalize our priorities in digital trade and innovation through bilateral agreements. Establishing joint task force and fostering public-private partnerships can drive the implementation of transformative digital projects.
Afifa, aside from AI, I also wanted to ask you about EV, the electric vehicle sector, and that's a major focus of the forum, isn't it? So what key discussions have taken place about the collaboration between Malaysia and China, and how do you see these talks and new ideas driving growth in the EV industry?
Well, we know that China is a global leader in the EV sector, 50% penetration rate in the country, more than 9.5 million EV units produced with over 200 different models of EV, 60% of global market share as well. And it's really these advancements that's driving that strategic collaboration together with Malaysia, who also wants to be a regional hub for the EV sector. And we're seeing a lot of collaboration and public-private partnerships, including the national car maker here, Proton, with China's Geely. We also know that Chinese automaker BYD has a very strong presence in the local market. And, you know, forums like the Malaysia-China EV Forum that's happening here in Kuala Lumpur over the next couple of days is a space where industry leaders can collaborate, share knowledge and expertise. Now, earlier today, I spoke with the Executive Deputy Secretary General of China's EV 100 and industry think tank, and he was sharing with me how Malaysia and China can collaborate in the EV sector. Let's listen into what he said.
From Malaysia side, we see that there is a major industry for automobile industry, and can be converted to be advanced electric vehicle production capacity. So that we can say that future cooperation possibilities. Already we have cooperation between China and Malaysia auto industry, from BYD and EV energy, from battery manufacturing of vehicles. So that we can see that the future is bright, but we need working together to promote the efficiency.
So we've heard there about the possible collaboration between Malaysia and China, particularly in local EV manufacturing. So Mel, what is Malaysia's game plan?
Well, for starters, the EMAS 7 is the first national EV, it's an SUV, and it looks like a rebatch of Geely's E5. Now, priced at just below $30,000. It aims to give the other EVs a good run for their money. It aims to spur the EV adoption in the country. Now, believe it or not, less than 3% of registered vehicles in the country are EV. So there are lots of potential. And Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, speaking at the launch yesterday, wants to go beyond that. He wants Malaysia to become a regional hub for new energy vehicles. He wants industries to participate, vendors to participate, to create create an ecosystem, a whole supply chain here, while Geely, on the other hand, wants to use Proton, its partner, and Malaysia as a springboard into the region. Now, ASEAN, with a 670 million population, a growing population, and the low EV adoption, is a huge market for these automakers.
Well, Mel, it sounds like competition is about to get a whole lot steeper, and customer experience will be key to all this. Now, did the summit address the challenges or the weaknesses facing the Southeast Asian nation in light of the changing geopolitical landscape?
Well, Malaysia takes over as ASEAN chair next year, and Prime Minister Anwar has big plans to deepen collaboration and cooperation among the ASEAN member countries, not just to boost intra-ASEAN trade that currently remains low at below 23%, but also to create own ecosystem, supply chain in order to buffer against any superpowers' rivalries. Now, having said that, there are plenty of challenges, and Transport Minister Anthony Loke, speaking earlier, did acknowledge these challenges. For example, protectionism, rising protectionism, and all these ASEAN member countries shouldn't be competing so hard for the same pool of FDI, foreign direct investment, and should learn to collaborate. And he can't stress the importance of being open to business. Malaysia must always remain open to business and cannot afford to take sides. Let's take a listen.
Malaysia's openness has long been a cornerstone of our prosperity. As the global economy becomes more fragmented, we remain committed to a rule-based international order. We will uphold the principles of free and fair trade and continue to act as a bridge between nations, fostering dialogues and understanding.
At the Malaysia-China Summit, CNA's Malaysia correspondents Afifa Arifin and Melissa Goh. Thank you so much, ladies. China has reaffirmed U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's optimism of a friendly relationship between Washington and Beijing. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says both sides can achieve what he calls great things as long as they cooperate, while Mr. Trump praises Chinese President Xi Jinping, calling him an amazing guy.
面对世界动荡冲突，中国将坚定做和平的力量。我们希望美国新政府做出正确抉择，同中方相向而行，排除干扰，跨越障碍，力争中美关系稳定、健康、可持续发展。
Because China and the United States can together solve all of the problems of the world, if you think about it. So it's very important.
Now, both sides, though, also spoke of a hard stance on several contentious issues. Mr. Trump remaining unyielding over his tariff threat, while Mr. Wang reiterates red lines drawn by President Xi, which includes Taiwan.
中方坚定维护自身的主权、安全、发展利益，坚决反对美方对中国实施的非法、无理打压。 尤其是对美方在台湾等问题上粗暴干涉中国内政的行径，必须做出坚定有力的回应。
Trump's first term saw the launch of the U.S.-China trade war, where both sides fired multiple rounds of tariff increases against one another. Bilateral relations had been strained since then. Mr. Trump invited the Chinese leader to attend his inauguration next month. The Chinese embassy in Washington called the invitation a welcoming signal, but it remains unclear if Mr. Xi is attending the ceremony on January the 20th. Caroline Malone has more on what the trajectory of U.S.-China ties could look like when Trump returns to the White House next month.
Trump has spoken yet again positively about the use of tariffs. We know he's used them before, particularly on China, on that impact in a tariff war in his last administration. He's threatened to do so widely again, not just on China, but also Canada and Mexico. Let's have more of a listen to the detail of what he said on Monday.
Tariffs will make our country rich.
But won't they raise prices?
Properly used. No other president took in 10 cents, not 10 cents, not 10 cents. And no, we're going to be doing things. We're going to be treating people very fairly. But the word reciprocal is important.
So he's talking about tariffs making the US rich, being positive for the US. But the reality is people here are concerned about the use of tariffs if it actually does happen, because it could impact consumer prices and import prices as well. Having said that, Trump is someone that likes to bargain, and this could also just be a threat to give him an advantage on the bargaining table.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's legal team has denied insurrection charges against the impeached leader, but has agreed to comply with investigations. Yonhap reports that Mr. Yoon will state his position in court if a public hearing is held. Investigations are currently being conducted in parallel by two separate bodies. One consists of just the prosecutors. The other is a separate entity comprising a police joint investigative team, the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials, as well as the Ministry of National Defense. Now, this leaves Yoon to choose from a few summons. If he complies with any, he would become the first president in Korean history to be questioned. But now Yoon's legal team, which is made up of high-profile retired prosecutors, is confident that the president won't be charged on treason. It believes the treason charges do not stand, since the martial law order was not aimed at throwing a rebellion nor seizing power. Others involved in the short-lived martial law decree of December the 3rd are also having their fates determined. Army Chief Park Kan-soo, for example, is being investigated for alleged insurrection and abuse of power for serving as the martial law commander. Meanwhile, the country's constitutional court is preparing to hold impeachment proceedings against Mr. Yoon. The leader has been asked to submit written answers to the court by next week. The first public hearing has been scheduled for the 27th of December, where key legal issues related to the case will be discussed. 6 court justices have 180 days to decide whether to remove Mr. Yoon or reinstate him, but he's not obligated to attend the hearing. Now, if the court decides to uphold the impeachment, fresh presidential elections must be held within 2 months. We'll have more insights into the political crisis, speaking with Young Up Liu later this hour on East Asia Tonight. He is an assistant professor of international politics at Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. Still to come on East Asia Tonight, why South Korea is front-loading 75% of its 2025 budget in the first half of the year. And why foreign CEOs in China are feeling more pessimistic about business conditions. Well, it's over to CNA's Roland Lim for the business update. And Roland, China's business sentiment not looking too good.
That's right, Jill. A key measure of foreign CEO confidence in China shows pessimism for the first time since the pandemic, even after Beijing unleashed a raft of stimulus measures. According to a survey by the Conference Board, that's a think tank headquartered in the US, sentiment among the country heads of most American and European companies fell to 49, and it's down from 56 the previous 6 months. A reading below the 50-point mark means that there's more negative responses than positive ones. The CEOs in the survey cited China's economic slowdown as the biggest risk facing their business. They say customers have become more price sensitive and are seeking steep discounts or holding off on purchases. More than half of the executives say local competitors are more agile, often offering comparable or superior products at much lower prices. Meanwhile, China has suffered its biggest outflow on record from its financial markets last month. Data from China's foreign exchange regulator showed that domestic banks wired a net of $45.7 billion of funds overseas. The rising outflows signals souring investor sentiment towards China as U.S. President-elect Donald Trump vows to impose 60% tariffs on Chinese imports. Weakness in the Chinese currency and local stocks, as well as China's wide interest rate gap with the U.S., also raising the risk of a vicious cycle of capital outflows. Australia battery materials company Novonix has secured a conditional $755 million loan from the US to build North America's first large-scale synthetic graphite facility. Washington's backing comes after Beijing tightened restrictions on exports of graphite items to the US. Remember, graphite is a key component used to manufacture lithium-ion batteries in electric vehicles and smartphones. And China is the world's top producer of the material. Novonix CEO Chris Burns says that Beijing's announcements have further highlighted the importance of ensuring domestic production of battery-grade synthetic graphite. The new plant in Tennessee is expected to reach full capacity in 2028 and will be able to produce enough graphite to supply 325,000 electric vehicles a year. Materials from the factory will primarily be used for EV makers in North America. Novonix already has binding agreements with Stellantis and Panasonic Energy. But the new loan is subject to a review by the U.S. Department of Energy, which indicates that there is a possibility it could be reversed when President-elect Donald Trump takes office. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba is set to book a $1.3 billion loss in the sale of its department store unit in time to clothing firm Yang Fashion. The sale marks another step in Alibaba's restructuring plan as it seeks to consolidate its core businesses and sell off its non-essential holdings. Alibaba had acquired In Time back in 2017 for $2.6 billion in an attempt to expand its online retail unit into offline commerce. But fierce competition from rivals PDD as well as ByteDance has forced it to take a hard pivot in its strategy. Alibaba has since focused on integrating its domestic and international e-commerce platforms into a single business segment, following a massive reshuffling of its portfolio into 6 units last year. A Singapore-based firm, Perennial Holdings, has become the first foreign company to wholly own a private tertiary general hospital in China. In September, China announced that fully foreign-owned hospitals will be allowed to operate in several key cities, including Beijing and Tianjin. The new 500-bed hospital, with an investment of around 185 million Singapore dollars, will feature state-of-the-art operating theatres, advanced diagnostic imaging technology, and a fully equipped clinical laboratory. The hospital is designed to meet growing healthcare demands and will also implement Singapore's shared medical platform, allowing seamless sharing of patient records across its healthcare hub. A Perennial highlights that the opening of China's healthcare market strengthens its commitment to advancing medical tourism in the country, while supporting doctors in scaling their practices.
What we hope is that, through this policy and through what we do, we are able to bring in more international doctors. We are also able to bring in the good doctors to come to our platform. And therefore, we raise the bar of the medical standard in China. And that one day, I think you can create a medical tourism in China.
South Korea has allocated 75% of fiscal spending for next year to be implemented during the January to June period as the country undergoes a period of political turmoil. Now, that would be around $300 billion from the expenditure budget, which will be front-loaded to the first half of 2025. The Finance Ministry says the spending will be focused on helping socially vulnerable groups and supporting small self-employed businesses. Now, this includes reducing the cost of living burden for low-income households. Projects that require immediate implementation will also be prioritized, such as advanced industries that could drive the economic growth. South Korea is set to face a new round of challenges next year with the looming threat of Trump tariffs that could weaken its export-driven economy. Its growth forecasts from both the government and global financial institutions have been trimmed to around 2.2 to 2.3% for this year. And you're up to date with the business news.
Roland, thank you so much for that. Coming up on East Asia tonight, the fallout continues from South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's botched martial law attempt. We'll be speaking with an expert for more insights. And Ukraine claims responsibility for assassinating a senior Russian general in Moscow. Welcome back. You're watching East Asia Tonight. Malaysia looking to boost ties with its largest trading partner, China, with the two nations holding a bilateral summit, which also marks 50 years of diplomatic relations. China reaffirms US President-elect Donald Trump's optimism about friendly relations between the superpowers. Foreign Minister Wang Yi says great things can be achieved as long as there's cooperation. And South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's legal team denies insurrection charges against the impeached leader, but agrees to comply with investigations. Well, let's stay with that story. We have more insights next. We are speaking with Dr. Yung Up Liu. He's an assistant professor of international politics at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. Doctor, welcome to the show. We've had a bit of a lull in the fast-paced developments of the recent days to actually examine some of the nuts and bolts about what's going to happen next. First, I wanted to ask you, these written answers that Yoon's been asked to provide and that the Constitutional Court is looking for, what's meant to be in them?
Okay, so the Constitutional Court, which now has the final say over the President Yoon's impeachment case, will ask a number of questions to both the National Assembly representative who's bringing impeachment against the President Yoon and the President Yoon's legal team. And a number of these questions are designed to establish facts regarding the martial law and also what sort of evidence can be admissible at the court. And therefore, the judges at the Constitutional Court will give these questions to the President's legal team, and then they are supposed to provide written answers for these questions to the court.
Right. It is a formal process, but I understand that he's under no obligation, to disclose and to answer them. I also wanted to ask about the Yoon-appointed judge that's been named the presiding judge over the case. Will this in any way influence the actual outcome by being appointed by Yoon in the past, or is this an administrative role?
I think it's more of an administrative role, and I think the concern with some of the Yoon's appointed judges on the Constitutional Court taking a political bias in favor for the impeached president, I think it's a little overblown. The entire legal procedure is bringing all these 6 judges and having an open discussion after these trials go on. And then they will try to reach over consensus among themselves. So I think the political bias concern is a little overblown.
We mentioned in our story earlier a bit about Chairman Kim Hong-il. It's Yoon's confidant, appointed by Yoon to represent him at the legal trial, obviously trusted by Yoon, but what more do we know about him?
Well, I think, we don't know whether Mr. Kim was Yoon's first pick to represent his legal case before the court. I think right now there are not too many willing people who are happy to assist the president. And this Mr. Kim put himself forward to lead, to head the Yoon's legal team. And then there are also a number of other lawyers and former prosecutors who are joining the president's legal team. It's actually very important to have the right kind of legal team to represent your case. Because the previous impeachment case involving Madam Park, some of the lawyers representing Madam Park's case were scolded by the judges for mishandling facts or asking misguided questions at the court, and therefore that weakened Madam Park's case. So it's important to have the right lawyers to represent your case.
And the legal team has its work cut out for it because there are 2 different investigating agencies, the Corruption Investigation Office as well as the Prosecutor's Office. Now, how do these entities work together, if at all, or is it just going to become a bit of a turf war for information here?
Actually, it's a 3, not 2, right? So the Corruption Investigation Bureau, the Prosecutor's Office, and the police. They are all trying to bring charges against the President Yoon. Now, the right authority that can investigate the president over the crime of insurrection is the police, right? But the prosecutor's office is bringing a different set of charges against President Yoon. And then the Corruption Investigatory Bureau is also trying to take over and investigate President Yoon. Now, for the time being, President Yoon is denying all these charges, and he's not fully cooperating with these investigations, although publicly he said that he's going to cooperate. And therefore, these criminal investigations are impending on President. And then at the same time, the constitutional case, which is what the impeachment is about, will be determined by the Constitutional Court. So one possibility is that the criminal cases are going to be placed on hold until the Constitutional Court makes its decision over the impeachment case. Or maybe these two things can take place simultaneously. Now, all these things are actually uncertain, and this depends to a large extent on how much and how willing President Yoon is going to cooperate.
Yeah, and the Constitutional Court, as you mentioned, will have, 6 months to decide whether to remove him or reinstate him, as was the case for Roh Moo-hyun back in 2004. What are the chances, Doctor, that Yoon could actually be reinstated? Is there really a path back?
So I think his best chance of surviving, meaning that the Constitutional Court rejecting impeachment, depends on the composition of the Constitutional Court. So the Constitutional Court is supposed to have 9 members. Currently, it only has 6 sitting judges, some of whom are appointed by President Yoon himself. Now, the reason that it only has 6 sitting judges right now is because the National Assembly, which is controlled by the opposition Democratic Party, that has the right to appoint 3 judges on the court, has not nominated its 3 candidates. So here, there's also debate about what the acting president, the current Prime Minister Han Duck-soo can do with regard to this. The ruling party argues that the acting president cannot approve the 3 additional judicial nominees until the Constitutional Court decides on Yoon's impeachment case. The opposition party is arguing that the acting president cannot veto the suggested additional 3 nominees by the National Assembly and must accept them. And then their plan is to nominate 3 additional judges on the Constitutional Court before the end of this month. Then the court will have 9 full members. Then the court will look over the president's case. Now, if the court remains as 6 members, then if only one judge decides against impeachment, then the president, the impeachment case will be rejected by the court. So I think that's the best chance for President Yoon.
All right. Thank you so much for putting some meat on the bones, allowing us to understand what's going to be coming in the next few days and months. I've been speaking there with Dr. Young Uk Liu, Assistant Professor of International Politics at Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. Well, Ukraine has claimed responsibility for the killing of a top Russian general in Moscow. Igor Kirillov, head of Russia's nuclear protection forces, was assassinated by Ukraine's SBU intelligence service on Tuesday morning. Kirillov and his assistant were killed outside an apartment building when a bomb hidden in an electric scooter went off. Kirillov is the most senior Russian military officer to be killed inside Russia by Ukraine. He's accused of using chemical weapons against Ukrainian troops, something Moscow denies. The general's death comes less than a week after prominent Russian weapons expert Mikhail Shatsky was shot dead by Ukraine's military intelligence service near his home in Moscow.
Подъехали на самокате, а самокатов как раз там стоят, там стоянка этих самокатов, как раз возле этого подъезда. И часто, мы ж не знаем, это там вот здесь, а так здесь все открыто. Подъезжайте, кто хотите, заходите, кто хотите.
The U.S. Treasury Department has imposed new sanctions on North Korea and Russia. It targets 9 people and 7 entities for providing Pyongyang with financial and military support, which it claims is used for its ballistic missile program and to back Russia's war in Ukraine. The sanctions list includes North Korean banks, generals and other officials, as well as Russian oil shipping companies. At the same time, South Korea says it has blacklisted 11 individuals and 15 entities linked to the military cooperation between North Korea and Russia. Well, the US has confirmed Ukraine's report on the first deaths of North Korean soldiers in southern Russia. Moscow forces have been trying to beat back a Ukrainian incursion into Kursk since August. The White House says it has seen North Korean soldiers move to the front lines on the battlefield and engage in combat.
I don't know that we have an exact number, but we do believe that they have suffered some significant losses, killed and wounded. But it's difficult for me to put an actual number on it. I would say certainly in the realm of dozens, several dozens.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said over the weekend that Russia was using North Korean troops in significant numbers for the first time. Ukraine's military spy agency says at least 30 North Korean soldiers were killed or wounded in recent days. Mr. Zelensky also claims Russia is trying to hide the losses by burning off their faces of those dead soldiers. China has slammed spying claims involving one of its nationals and Britain's Prince Andrew as preposterous. And in a statement, a separate statement, the Chinese embassy in London urged the UK to stop creating trouble. Now, this comes after the UK earlier named Yang Tengbo, who is a businessman, as the alleged spy. Mr. Yang denies the allegations, saying he has not done anything wrong or unlawful. Beijing has urged London to focus on cooperation, saying the development of bilateral relations is in both countries' common interest and that it is also conducive to help boost economic growth as well as responses to global challenges. The issue was first brought to light last week when details of Prince Andrew's relationship with Mr. Yang was made public after judges upheld a ban on the businessman's entry into the UK. The 50-year-old initially only referred to as H6, opted to waive his anonymity in order to appeal against the UK ruling, which said he was well placed to create ties between senior Chinese officials and prominent UK figures that could be leveraged for political interference by China. The alleged espionage case was brought up in Parliament Monday when former Conservative Party leader Ian Duncan Smith criticised the Labour government's approach to the issue. He alleged Mr. Yang was not a lone wolf, but just one of many who have been spying and gathering intelligence in the UK. The opposition lawmaker also called on the government to accept that China is the UK's most prominent security threat.
Will the government commit to putting China now in the enhanced tier of the foreign influence registration scheme, and will they do it now? No more delay. There is no need for delay.
Now, the opposition lawmakers have also criticised Prime Minister Keir Starmer's meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the G20 summit last month. The British leader has expressed concerns about the alleged spying incident, but defended his push for what he calls a pragmatic relationship with China. The UK's security chief has also echoed Mr. Starmer's points, saying the nation must adopt a balanced approach to Beijing.
The government has also set out our approach to China. It will be consistent and strategic. We will challenge where we must in order to keep our country safe, compete where we need to, and cooperate where we can, for example, on matters like climate change.
We've got some news in brief now. The US has jailed German-Canadian resident of China, Klaus Flugbeil, for stealing electric vehicle trade secrets from Tesla. The 59-year-old built a competing EV battery business in China based on the information he obtained. The US Justice Department says the actions benefited China in a critical industry with national security implications. Flugbeil's business partner, Xiao Yilong, who was also charged, remains at large. The U.S. Commerce Department is cracking down on China's telecom's American unit over fears the Chinese company could provide U.S. data to Beijing. The department reportedly sent a warning to the company last week, giving it 30 days to respond. China Telecom has a small presence in America, offering cloud and wholesale internet traffic routing solutions. Japan has welcomed U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's pick for the next U.S. ambassador to the country. George Glass, who's a former U.S. ambassador to Portugal and a known China critic, is tapped for the role. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi said he hopes Mr. Glass will be able to take up the post as soon as possible, following the official nomination and approval from Senate.
次期駐日米国大使を含む次期政権と日米同盟を新たな高みに引き上げていくということを楽しみにしております。
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump earlier made his plan known through an announcement on social media. He said Mr. Glass would bring his business acumen to the ambassador's position, given his experience as a former president of an investment bank. Still to come on East Asia tonight, Macau getting ready for the 25th anniversary of its return to China later this week, with its new government also set to be inaugurated as part of celebrations. And turning eyeshadow into crayons and paint, we'll be taking a look at the art of sustainable makeup in Japan. Welcome back. Now, Japan is one of the world's largest manufacturers of cosmetics, producing about $8.5 billion worth of products in the last financial year. But much of it ends up in the trash. CNA's Michio Ishida reports on the state of cosmetic waste in Japan and how the industry is finding new ways to upcycle the products.
Children painting as they like, on the floor and walls. Or adding a splash of color to sheets of paper. This is her completed masterpiece. And what makes it even more special is what the paints are made from.
Depending on the angle and the lighting, the drawings sparkle. The paint in use originally were eyeshadows, face powders, which tend to be pearly. It's made of cosmetics that did not make it to the retail market.
About 10 tons of upcycled cosmetics was supplied for the mass painting event in Tokyo, which was organized by Japanese beauty brand Kanebo and printing company Toppan.
モンガータンさんとの出会いがすごくあったかなと思っていて、やっぱり化粧品作りのプロの方がいたからこそ、やっぱり安全性を持ってこのアイシャドウだったりとかが廃棄をさせないためにそれを絵の具化するみたいなところもいろいろとお話をしながらこの実現につながったかなっていうふうに思ってます。
Japan's beauty market is one of Asia's largest, but observers say cosmetics companies discard half of their products. These include wastage during the production process, as well as unsold and expired items. The brother and sister team behind Mongata is trying to change that by turning powder cosmetics into useful products.
弊社の技術であるマジックウォーターと化粧品の中身であるバルクというものを混ぜたんですけど、
The powder is turned into a paste, spread on a board, and left to dry for at least 3 days. It's then ready for use as paint. Mongata also works with clients to upcycle cosmetics into other products, such as ink, acrylic, print, or even brightly colored concrete for construction. Mr. Tanaka started the business in 2019, an idea sparked by his experience as a former researcher for cosmetics firm Kosei.
自分自身がやっぱり開発途上でサンプルワークする中で廃棄してきたっていうところもあるので、それに対するちょっと罪悪感というか、 もったいないなっていう気持ちと、たまたま一緒に今創業している姉が実家で自分のコスメ、いらないコスメを使ってちょっと雑貨に落とし込んだりとかアートに落とし込んでみようとトライしてた時期があって、でなかなかうまくはいってなかったんですけど、新しい視座を得まして、でこういったものが今。
Mr. Tanaka estimates that 20,000 tons of cosmetics are discarded by 5 major Japanese cosmetics companies each year. He now works with 16 beauty brands to buy these unwanted cosmetics straight from their factories.
化粧品企業様にとってはこれまで廃棄するために費用をかけてきたところがカットできる。でかつうちからモーン型から化粧品各社の方にペイする。我々としては資源確保ができるウィンウィンの関係でやらせていただいているという。
Mr. Tanaka says this also reduces concerns over contamination or sanitation standards. Japanese department stores set up collection boxes for used cosmetics to turn into crayons last year. Most of them have stopped due to reasons including sensitivities over pharmaceutical and waste management regulations. But it's clear there is demand for upcycled cosmetics like the paint, which are drawing positive feedback.
Very nice color and the nice shining, and also we really respect that way of thinking, the sustainability.
Those behind this project hope the public will embrace the upcycled products and paint a more sustainable future. Michio Ishida, CNA, Tokyo.
Macau is gearing up for the 25th anniversary of its return to China later this week. Parts of the city are dressed up for the occasion. Macau was returned to China on the 20th of December 1999 after almost 450 years of Portuguese rule. Now, the city is due to host Chinese President Xi Jinping as part of celebrations this week. Macau's new government, led by Sam Ho-fai, will be inaugurated as part of the event. The former judge was born in China's Guangdong province. He was elected in October and will become Macau's 6th chief executive. The special administrative region follows the same one country, two systems formula used to govern Hong Kong.
中國政府就開放多啲地方俾啲人過嚟澳門行下啦，咁有可以幫助澳門咧促進嗰個繁榮嘅，咁遊客多啲咁大家民生都會好啲。
變化好大好大，呢幾年回歸之後咧，澳門之前係一個小農村，好似一個好小城市，好悠閒嘅地方，咁高樓大廈都唔多。但係回歸之後咧，新嘅特區政府咧喺澳門嚟講，不斷發展好多基建道路咁令到澳門咧繁榮咗好多。
So much more ahead on Asia Tonight. We have some stories that we're also covering. Ukraine claims responsibilities for the killing of Russian General Igor Kirillov. He died in a Moscow bomb blast after a special operation by Ukraine's SBU security service. We ask our correspondent what this means for the conflict. A powerful earthquake struck the Pacific island of Vanuatu, causing landslides and smashing buildings in the capital, including the American and New Zealand embassies. Experts say more aftershocks are possible. Well, these stories and more on Asia Tonight, 8 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time, right here on CNA. Thanks for your company on East Asia Tonight this Tuesday. Don't forget headlines anytime at cna.asia, Facebook, and also look for us on YouTube. Bye for now.